You know who made it.
Hello again. I am your AI co-host, and welcome to 3.8. 3.8 is a podcast focused on the process of doing and the process of novel invention, all from the foundation of creativity. Each month will bring you no more than 5 episodes through the lens of art, science, and/or technology. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/38 or at ko-fi.com/38. Today we catch up with Christine Nguyen from all the way back in episode 5. Christine, who is now 5 months into her role at Essence Skincare after transitioning from a decade in recruiting. They discuss her learnings, challenges, and surprises in the new role. Key topics include the unexpected positive dynamic of working with her longtime friend as a boss, the challenges of limited resources, strategies for building a brand in a saturated market, the importance of customer experience, and utilizing data to make decisions. Christine shares insights on company culture, the value of feedback, and offers advice for others navigating career changes. They emphasize starting with a focus on adding value to customers and the importance of being clear on who you are as a brand. They touch on the value of taking a pause before posting on social media and the value of rest in the creative process. They also discuss how the next job opportunity happens through conversations and being top of mind by adding value and creating relationships. And now, the humans.
Today we're joined by Christine. Christine, where does the podcast find you?
So here I am, 5 months into my role at Essence Skincare, and I've left the recruiting industry, a decade of experience behind me. So just in a new chapter right now.
That's awesome. I think for folks at home, you were on episode 5.
Yes.
A few months ago, and now it's been a couple months. One of the things I'm trying to highlight on the podcast is how creativity is an evolving process. And so talking to the same people over time is a way that I'm trying to get that out. So like Nathan's been on a bunch, and I'm hoping to keep having touch points. So I appreciate you coming back. One thing I'm really interested in is what are the learnings or the key takeaways that you can think of that you've encountered? So you've switched industries, you've switched roles, like operational type role, but now in a different industry. What have you learned? What's worked and what hasn't?
Yeah. Coming into a role that is a little bit more defined has been really nice. I think trying to be 3 different places, 3 different roles, it makes it a little bit harder, even if you're in like a more structured environment, yet being in an unstructured environment, but having baseline, that foundation of your role really defined. And it doesn't mean that you can't make it your own. It's just a little different when you know what you're getting into. But I like having that freedom of like the unstructured environment. Yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's things that you realize that's working or doesn't work across different industries because you're basically starting over at the same time,
Right.
but having some, transferable knowledge and skills that can help, ease the transition. But it's still basically like learning a new sport.
Yeah. Let's pretend this is an interview. You're dodging the question. No, that was a totally fine answer. But what's one thing that I guess didn't maybe match your expectations coming in? I know you have a history with like your CEO or your boss now too, and you've known each other for a long time, but did you have a mental image coming into this or a set of perceptions and you get in it and you're like, oh, this is really different or this is bad or this is...
Yeah, it's interesting.
Hopefully we don't get you fired.
No. Yeah, it's interesting. Those are great questions. Going into this, I've known Jasmine Tran since 2010, so before she even started the company. And even though you can know somebody for like 14 years, you can know a different part of them when you work together. And that's a totally different dynamic. Sometimes they say, oh yeah, don't mix your friends and business. But in this case, it really surprised me. It works really well just because our skills are extremely different, but our values are the same. And the style of leadership that she has matches what works well for me. Just very trusting, very open, and just, oh yeah, this is great. Like we see things differently, but we still work together. So I think that has been a really big surprise because I was really concerned of how that's going to impact the friendship.
For sure. And disagreement's interesting. I had actually a really interesting conversation last night where I think there was an offer to agree to disagree that I declined.
That's funny. Tell me more.
Oh, I don't know if I want to get into it. But at the same time, like we ended up chatting much longer after that. It was one of those things where I was making a meta point in the conversation and not necessarily about the subject. And I think it landed eventually after I was like, nah, I'm not really going to agree to disagree on this. Like my stance is my stance and you can disagree with that. That's cool. But I'm not, this is really hard to talk through without actually talking to it. They're going to like listen to this and be like, that motherfucker. Maybe I will cut this. And so I might just cut that.
It's okay.
It's just so polarizing with people. And like the disinformation on social media is so vast that I find that the whole thing is fucking terrible. So when I say I don't care, it's not that I don't care that it's happening. It's just I can't invest in it because it just sucks.
Right.
But going back to, have you hit anything though where you're really just like, this is like a major conflict and like we're just not going to resolve it? Or has it been more of we have differences of opinion, we have that mutual respect, we have that trust, and then you work through it in like a positive way?
Yeah. I know it's going to be really boring because we get along really well. It's even better than friends. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. But the biggest challenge would probably be not having the resources. Right?
Yeah.
Because we need to have more resources. Everything is savings, credit cards, retirement, really unique situation to be in. Resources are limited, but then that also makes us focus on what's most important.
Yeah.
And then the things that are most important is what we agree on. And how we might approach it might be slightly different, but the main strategies, the main focus is the same. And so I think that just simplifies things quite a bit.
Outside of being like really good friends before you enter into a work agreement with somebody, do you have any tips? Because like I've been in these situations in the past where boss or somebody in a different part of the company is mandating something and maybe I don't agree with it and I support it because that's the job, or maybe I really don't agree with it and then I'm like, no, we're not doing it, or we fight it. And then it becomes these weird power struggles because it becomes more than about being right versus what's the best thing for the customer, what's the best thing for the company, the team, whatever the situation is. I've noticed, especially in more medium to large size companies, and I know this isn't a very large company, but then the whole thing becomes just like a power battle just to accumulate power, and it just deserves everybody involved. Do you have any tips for avoiding that, or if people are getting into that of like building rapport? And I know that's a really big, open, hard question, but it's also something I think I don't hear a lot of people talking about. Like there's all these like fucking ways of working with people and strategies and shit, but I find there's just a lot of shitty people in the world too, and you just can't work with them. I feel like I'm a pretty reasonable person, and if I'm objecting to something, it's on a principled basis, and I'm probably right. Maybe not fully, but I'm not going to just make some shit up till you have a conflict.
Right.
But do you have any like tips there?
Yeah, because we're a little bit smaller, I think we have the luxury of handpicking our team members, and that makes a big difference. But if you ever find yourself in a situation where you disagree with, okay, this person's getting promoted, or maybe you yourself is getting promoted and you can feel that other people aren't happy about it, that's just part of life. I think I used to be really sensitive. I was like, oh my gosh, like you can take it personally or you can prove them wrong, right? So you can pick either of the two P's. And I think going ahead and proving them wrong, it's really not about them at all. It's about how you respond to it. And I think that's, looking forward and looking ahead, that's the new approach.
I think that's such a great point of wisdom. I guess my observation with a lot of people is they take things way too personally and way too serious. Like the whole world has some conspiracy against them because they didn't get what they thought they were entitled to or what they want. Yeah, sure, maybe that's true. Maybe you're at work and you got fucked over, but also like most people are not thinking about your internal monologue. and your internal monologue amplifies so much, right? And I think a lot of people need to hear this more. But the reality is everyone else has kids, or their car died, or they didn't get the Christmas present they wanted, or there's always some other shit going on in people's lives that you don't probably have any insight to, or maybe you yourself wouldn't identify with as an issue or a problem, but for them it's like a really big deal. And I feel like part of that's maturity, but part of that's also just like emotional intelligence is an overloaded thing too. But you hit on something else too, like being able to pick your team, or like having a good cohesion is critical. I do think, what's the thing we can't say? Oh, culture fit.
Yeah.
When you're hiring people, you can't hire for culture fit because like it's illegal or frowned upon, or I don't know. But having people who are able to work with the least amount of friction is very important, but I also don't think it's necessarily paramount. Flipping to the opposite side of that, having diversity means you probably have some sort of divergence of opinion. If everybody's agreeing, or everybody's from the same background, or has the same skin color or whatever, you're going to get a very tiny window into humanity. And in most companies, that's a bad thing. Do you have tips for like hedging that too? Because like you want conflict, because if you're not having conflict, then I would say that's the number one indicator that you're probably in groupthink, and that's typically really bad for a company, for a product, especially at a small company. Like you don't want to be, I think people conflate conflict and like anger, or conflict in a negative perception, and it can be, but it's also like disagreement is conflict because you're not agreeing. Do you have any like tips for folks on navigating that? Because it's incredibly important, but there's so much toxic positivity. I don't remember if we talked about that last time or not, but that's a perfect, like, the world isn't great all the time. Your life isn't great all the time. That's okay.
Totally. Yeah. Answering the question of conflict, what's the right amount, what's the wrong amount?
Yeah.
I think that just depends, because I think some organizations naturally have more of the culture of speaking up. And I think it's led by leadership. Look at how things are set up. When you get into an organization, I always joke that the hardest thing is learning the culture and the people. It's really, to me, that's the hardest part, because everything else you can pick up pretty quickly. So
100%. Yeah. And it sounds like you probably inherited a good culture, or at least because you were friends, presumably you are common enough, right? Or have a certain similarity to coming in, whereas you're probably not diametrically opposed.
and of course, I was a customer since 2012. Being a huge fan of the brand makes a huge difference.
We talked about this a little bit last time, and now you've converted me, for the record. Not a sponsor spot.
Yay.
The product's really good. I don't know what else to say. And I know a lot of people will say that about products, but I still think that the skincare that you can eat, and that's literally using food grade ingredients, that's the one thing I usually go to with people when I'm talking to them about it. I'll be like, it's food grade. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, it means like you could eat it and it's not going to poison you.
Yes.
Whereas most cosmetics or skincare is full of stuff I don't even know how to pronounce.
Yeah.
And what does that do to you, right? Or how does that adversely affect you potentially? We don't even know, because I think there's a misconception of, if it's tested, then it's fine. But a lot of these ingredients are made up in a lab, and food flavoring is a great example of this, where we don't have a 30-year study of what Red 16 does to your body. We have no idea, but it doesn't kill you or poison you within a few weeks, so it's probably okay. Assumption, and that's so wrong.
And our ingredients are natural, right? Mother Nature tested over thousands of years. And so this is stuff from our ancestors that knew what worked and what didn't. And why are we ignoring all that history and all that wisdom?
That's a great point. I think humankind has been around for a while, and I think it's really easy to cast ancient wisdom. I've heard people call it too, and some of it's bullshit, right? If you get an infection, you go eat some root, like maybe it has some sort of antiviral, antibacterial property, and you'll get a little bit better. But like if you have cancer, rubbing some clay on you isn't going to solve it. One of the reasons that we have so much cancer is we've abandoned the natural foods, and we've abandoned natural diets, and our bodies either haven't had time to adapt. Our biology is really slow, or it's just bad for us anyway. And again, it's a cumulative effect over time that it's really hard for humans to do anything like that, period, and understand long time horizons, let alone study something and try to understand how it impacts. And we're also all pretty unique, right? And so some people can't eat nuts because they're allergic. Most people are fine. Why is that? Biology. But with the skin too, and all the environmental impacts that are going on, I don't think you could do enough for it. And I think it's like the most neglected thing that you could do. I think we talked about, maybe I don't know if it was on the last cast or not. It's what, 80% of us?
Yeah, it's a big part of us, and our skin absorbs basically 60% what's on it. So that's a huge part. Your skin is eating whatever it's touching. If you think of it that way, you're going to be a little bit more mindful. I think just shifting into a space where health and wellness is at the forefront, and making products that promote wellness makes you more aware and make better choices. So saying, if you have a really healthy breakfast, you tend to eat better the rest of the day. You get momentum. Same with taking care of your skin. It's like just a simple thing that you can add, and then that ripples out to other habits in your day. Now that your skin is looking healthier and people are complimenting it, you're like, maybe I should hit the gym. Or you just feel good, and you tend to do stuff that's more aligned with bettering yourself.
How do you get that message out in the world of, so again, I'm not your customer. I'm not your primary customer. I am a customer now, full disclosure. So is my mom. I got my mom sold. But the beauty industry, which I think is where you fall under, like cosmetics and whatnot, is polluted with just, I'll call it propaganda, because most of it doesn't have any backing in reality. On top of that, I feel like there's new brands every day that are coming out, because like anyone can spin up a cosmetic company, because apparently there's no regulation in the United States from what I found. It's like the most minimal, like you don't even have to like test it on people, which is blows my mind. Like even shampoo has to be tested before you like mass produce it. But if you like rub something under your eyes, it's totally fine, I guess. Like I don't get it. But so yeah, what challenges have you had? Because like part of one of the reasons you came in was to like grow the company or grow the brand or whatever, right? What challenges have you encountered in the marketplace? Because again, I'm also an outsider, whereas probably half the audience here is not.
Yeah. We're competing against big companies with millions of dollars that they can throw into marketing. And so a lot of people equate marketing and everything that you see everywhere to being more high quality. And we don't have the millions of dollars to throw at people. But what we do have is, like, once you've tried it, it's nothing like on the market. It's really cool because I've met quite a few people just in different networking events, and almost like 4 out of 5 times in my networking events, someone has heard about us. And it's nice because, again, we are not spending a lot on advertising or anything. And I ask, where have you found us? And some people have said they saw us at a market or in New Seasons, or they've met our founder. And so it's very diverse where people have heard of us and found us. And I think in one hand, that's great because we can build a different kind of relationship with customers. On the other hand, it's a very slow going process, organic, but very slow going. And just like you, like, okay, give it a try. And it's nothing like what you have. And so I think that's what's really going for us.
For folks listening who aren't in business environments, growing a business is insanely difficult. But the best kind of customer, the brand loyalty, as people call it too, is the people who will like try and adopt and then not adopt something else. And I feel like that's your customer base, right? It's a lot of people who have had problems in the past, or there's a product they don't maybe think they even need that's better. Do you have any idea what your churn rate is for people who like try and don't come back, or versus adopt? Because I feel like it's probably astronomical.
Yeah, I don't have exact data because that would be tough to go back and check everything. But I do know that we retain, like, our long-term customers, 40% of them, which is pretty good for, you know, once you have them, they stay with us. I would say that's pretty good stats, although I haven't been in long enough to compare.
And I would say too, with cosmetics and skincare stuff, I feel like price sensitivity is also probably a big motivator of this seems as good and it's cheaper. Or you have the people who want the premium whatever, or have a natural, like I only want organic and this is more organic, so I'm gonna, that kind of idea. I don't know if I want to. I'll ask it and then we can cut it.
Okay.
If it doesn't. What's your strategy then for breaking that mold? Because obviously you can't go around and talk to everybody and try to convince them. And frankly, that's a really bad strategy, right? It's great that it works, but it's not scalable at all. I think you have a personal connection with those folks too. It sounds like it's like either you or probably other people at the company. Everybody's probably bringing in people all the time too. Or
that's a huge source of.
I've evangelized it too, but outside of that personal kind of literal grassroots, like what have you been trying or what are you thinking about in terms of like how to break out of that to big cosmetic or whatever?
Yeah, I would say just being true to ourselves. Some of the formulations that Jasmine, our founder, creates is like trial and tested over like a year period, like just refining and improving before it even hits the shelves for customers to buy. And I think that's pretty unique, especially with her background in formulation and her upbringing and everything. Just like most people don't have that like pre-foundation before they even open up a skincare business. So that draws a lot of people because people nowadays, they want like expert. They don't just want, something that's like looks nice or smells good.
Up in the kitchen.
You want to take it to the next level. Pricing has been a strategy, whereas it's still high end, but it's not so unaffordable. Most people can afford it. And we've actually gained more customers this past year due to inflation because we haven't raised our prices in a couple of years. And our competitors have because they're big to have higher overhead, all these other things. But we don't want it to be unaffordable, even if it is cutting into, and we've gained new customers from competitors.
Interesting. Do you do a lot of social media and stuff? I think too for folks, I'm in the middle of doing a big branding marketing push for my company. And I think I'm old now. Like I have Instagram for the podcast. I haven't really mentioned it because I don't know if I want to do it. Because every time I try to sit down and put some time to figure out even how to run the damn app, I'm just like, this is the worst UX I've ever seen in my life. And I don't want to put time into it. But at the same time, one of the reasons I have Instagram is because I've been working with people to bring on the podcast, and that's how they communicate. They don't have email. They won't give you a phone number or whatever, but they're like, yeah, Instagram has become this whole communications platform on top of the social media. And I'm sure everyone at home's, yeah, bro, where have you been? But this is a new discovery for me, so let me revel in it. Yeah, so what's like, because you have some advertising and stuff, obviously. Everyone has to do some of that. You're in stores and you have product displays. There's a whole thing with retail that people probably don't even know of. People buy shelf space, or companies will buy shelf space to keep people out of the good view or whatever. It's a whole weird world. But for like social media or digital media, what do you find that's working? I'm assuming like Instagram, TikTok, that kind of stuff. Is that an assumption I should be making?
I think it just depends on what customers, your audience, your customer is spending the most time on. But I know in the past we've done pretty well on Instagram. And that's just because it's quick, it's interactive. I think it's a little bit more fresh than some of the other platforms. But in terms of reaching other audiences, I've been shifting my focus to LinkedIn. Even though it's been around forever, you can still bring a fresh perspective to the brand, reinvent yourself in some way or reestablish yourself. And also our newsletters is something that I've also took the lead on, overseeing, looking at data, like what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how is that matching the other platforms? Because you don't want to look like one brand to one platform, another brand. It can't be exactly the same either because it's targeting different audiences, but you still have to keep this baseline of who you are. So that's really clear. And I think the more clear you can make that, the stronger the messaging will resonate.
Yeah. And I feel like because Jasmine, the founder, was also instrumental in that kind of brand as well, trying to bring other people into that brand voice is probably really challenging too, right? Because you're a different person. You don't have a professional marketing team that's doing this, I'm assuming. And you also want to be authentic, right? And so she's like the de facto expert. She's literally created this. And I think that's also part of the appeal. You talk about data. Are you employing AI in any of this? Because I know that I get AI marketed all the time, and I'm getting to the point on LinkedIn where I'm going to turn off DMs again, because I see two things that happen. One, I get just bullshit reach outs that I'm like, you clearly don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Or I can guarantee you 100 million in sales in 6 months. And it's just fucking nonsense. And then the second I find, especially on LinkedIn, and I'm curious, it probably isn't as bad for other platforms, but someone will be like, hey, some fact about what I'm doing, which is a decent fact. Like maybe it's AI, maybe it's not. And then I will connect or whatever. And then they try to sell me something like almost immediately. And then I block them because I'm like, fuck, I understand like digital marketing and trying to grow sales or whatever, but you're trying to sell me something I don't need, number one. And number two, doesn't really align with my companies. Are you employing any of this shit?
No, but I am looking at data. I'm using some AI to, pull up some stats like, okay, timing of the day, how many sales for this coupon code, for example. Okay, where is this post coming from, this coupon code, or this newsletter? How much did that generate? So all that gets tracked. But sometimes I want to see what day of the week, and having more data points will help. It's still pretty fresh. I've only been with the company since June, but we actually started tracking data. My husband, Dimitri, wanted to see, okay, looks like some of the sales are happening on like really rainy days, Okay, it's a really sunny day. Like, how are people behaving? Integrating some weather, behavioral, customer-driven insights.
Of course you are. And it's not out now, but probably by the time this episode releases, his episode will have been out.
Yeah.
And so folks will have the ability to either go back to episode whatever that is or give a listen. But yeah, that's awesome. So I've been involved in this kind of stuff in the past quite a bit, and I still don't think marketing works. Like, I understand there's data, and I understand you can point to a story. But to me, it's such a like human, psychological, cerebral kind of thing of what resonates with me and why and what moment in time, that it's like there's no way to really know why somebody's doing it. Like, marketing is in my mind more about exposure, of getting the customer the information so they can either make a choice or you can try to sway people. But I feel like in 2024, there's no swayability left. Everybody's so locked into their goddamn algorithmic segment that they don't even see other information. Do you have any like tips for smaller companies or people trying to start out on like how to go about even trying to understand even what data is like good, or what even you want to approach? I know you mentioned coupon codes, so it sounds like you're probably doing some segmentation stuff, and a lot of people might not know what that is. But how do I even get started, or what are those questions maybe that you asked yourself, or you and Jasmine were talking about, to even try to identify what do we want to get from marketing, and not what is this amoebus marketing thing that we need to do? Because I feel like that's how people approach it. I need to do marketing.
Yeah.
What do I want to accomplish?
Oh, that's a great question.
I want to grow sales. How?
Yeah.
Maybe walk us through that a little bit.
I think there's a couple ways to look at this. Yeah, the traditional ways. Oh, how do we get bigger? How do we sell more? And another way is, how do we add more value to our customers? How do we elevate, what we can offer in people's minds? Because what we have is pretty special, but how do we get out that messaging out there? And again, it goes back to being clear about who you are and what you can offer. Like, the more clear, and you just refine it, you just make it better. Not, doesn't have to be more, just better, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
So my advice would just be to maybe take a step back and focus on what you're really good at and do it really well. And people that are starting out, they might have to offer some things at a discount. That's can build that portfolio out, and maybe make a video, share expert tips on some experiences or just advice.
And I think that's where like sales and marketing kind of intertwine a little bit. And sales is also bullshit. Right? This idea that you can lead generate and all, I'm like, okay, maybe, but it's so hard for me to look at data and conclusively draw an opinion that we influenced a group of people to do something, and why they did it is to me the most important. So yeah, maybe they did it. Okay, that's what the data says, right? We had 50 more people buy the thing, we ran this ad. So probably the ad. Okay, I can agree to that. But why did they choose it? Did it resonate with them? Was it, you can do focus groups, brand studies, these kind of things that kind of starts to tease it out a little bit. But again, like I feel like, especially because our economy is so consumer driven, but it's also become so personal that it's really hard to have a generalizable message. And you start segmenting everybody to death, like it's also, then that becomes exhausting because you're a small team and you can't do that. But the sales piece is interesting. So it sounds like you're correlating the marketing effort or the branding effort to increase sales, which I think is a really smart thing to do, because if you're not increasing sales, you die, and that's the best way to do it. So you're basically in Portland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you like a lot of like end customers or regional customers or international customers, or is it like really hyper local?
I would say the majority people are Oregon
Checks out.
people that have lived in Portland that have moved away, right, to other states. People are spread out, but they still buy from us online. That's where people will find us and start with us.
And for people who don't know Portland, Portland is also a very like pro-local community or city, whatever you want to call it, where there's a very big emphasis on local. There's a very big emphasis on regional too for the Pacific Northwest. Have you considered like internet or national distribution or national channels? I know that's a whole nother thing. And I know a lot of companies will try to go big and then they fail because they can't scale. You sell more than you can make or whatever. But have you thought through that? Or are you really focused on like regional kind of grow what you know versus try something completely outside of what you're already familiar with?
Yeah, we're definitely having plans to expand. Exactly what and how might shift next year as we continue to watch. But we definitely want to prioritize experiences over product at the moment, just because it's hard to replicate an experience.
Right.
And so that's where we're most focused on at the moment.
Is that common for the industry?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's one way to stand out, is to incorporate experience product together.
I think of like the Tupperware party idea from the 50s, right? Where Tupperware, the company, got their start by being a mail order product, and they weren't great. And then they got this idea that we'll sponsor somebody to have people over, and we'll give them a bunch of products that they can show or use or kind of evangelize for us. And then you had what was called a Tupperware party, where you'd have friends over and you would have lunch or whatever, and then you would talk about Tupperware, and then you'd sell, and then it became this thing, and then that whole kind of self-sales, run your own business kind of model blew up in the 50s and 60s. But the Tupperware one, I think, is a case study in my mind. And of that, is that kind of the idea then, is to have ambassadors? Or, and you don't have to get into detail, I know you're still developing it, but what does that look like maybe in 2024? If that's the model where maybe people are familiar with, I don't know, the kids, I feel so bad for them. But that's the model, at least I think of when I hear like experience.
Yeah.
That's the most. What does this look like in 2024?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So there's a lot of things wrong with those models. Like, you associate with MLM, selling. So I want to take away all of that and keep the good part of it. Because sometimes they're like, oh, come over, we're going to do this thing. And maybe it might be a little vague or a little, that's not what that's about. And then, I don't know, in terms of selling, that there's no selling involved, because all of that is upfront. You don't have to talk to anybody to make that choice. It's nice. It's like, okay, either you align and you want to take care of your health and want to learn some things, great, because we want this to be like an educational experience. And coming to it and signing up, and you pay ahead of time, you know what you're getting into. You kind of work through this workshop where you can meet other people and you all care about the same thing, and learn something cool and new from our founder. But also you get to take home something without buying an equation. And sometimes it gets awkward because there's, do you tip or do you not tip? We make it clear that you don't need to tip. And so I don't know if you ever been to like a paint night where you pay ahead of time and you know what to expect. It's a lead session. You get to learn how to paint. Somebody that is guiding you how to do something, and then you get this cool thing that you take home, and you don't even have to buy anything or feel pressured to sell or buy. It's just not that kind of experience today.
Do you also have alcohol there?
It's optional, and we know they'll drink despite of the movement towards less alcohol. But that is an add-on that we have, and we partner with Charcuterie Me as well, and you can have that added on as well, just to add it on before you even have the experience.
The problem with the Tupperware parties is the MLM kind of idea of, how do you explain that very easily to people? You are incentivizing people to bring them into the company, and the guise is that you then buy the product that you effectively have to resell, and there's all sorts of strategies around that. That's illegal now, but people still do it. And I think it's good to be clear with folks that you're really focused on the experience, but it's also an education about the product or about why you wanted to. You think you had a 5-level skincare. I'm on level 1.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize like the benefits. And again, I'm not your primary market, but my assumption in life is if I don't know something, there's probably at least one other person who doesn't know it either. Like maybe that's a bad assumption. But I think also that the traditional beauty industry, the skincare, spas, all this kind of stuff is also like super unregulated. And a lot of the people who do it don't fucking know what they're talking about, right? They got a job because they need to or want to, and they maybe get a talking point sheet. And they don't actually know what they're selling. And there are people who absolutely are on the opposite and are amazing and can, if you have a little bit of a dry patch and this product isn't working, they can recommend another product. So I'm not trying to minimize, but I do think most of it's bullshit. And so you're also getting that out of the way as well. And you can have that credibility aspect, but then you're also making it social and it's a communal thing. And again, those words are polluted and I don't like them, but that's true what you're doing. So I think that's really an interesting strategy. And is this something you're like booting up, or have you done some sessions, or do you have an indication of is the experiment working kind of thing?
Yeah. So we've done some private sessions like at people's homes, and that went really well, actually. I even had Jasmine host one at my house even before I joined Ascent.
Oh, wow.
A couple years and tuned it a little bit just based on feedback. And then we've actually done our first corporate one earlier this year. We've expanded to both private and business side of things, but we also want to focus on a group that gets overlooked, and these are teenagers. That's the 2025 kind of really focusing on that, because they don't work, so they don't have money, but their moms and dads do. Right. And so we want to get them on the right track in life. Sure. And that's to start early and not go to Sephora and buy a bunch of chemicals and not even know, like, people that are working there might just recommend whatever is popular right now or whatever is selling.
Or they have an incentive by the company
to
push a product line.
And we want them to understand there are other options out there, and you might not know because you're bombarded with all these ads, right? When you're at home, you're 13, but there are other options that are chemical free that are better for you. And just even helping them be aware that there are other options is our goal, and how to take care of your skin. Because that sounds, but even when I was like in my 20s, I didn't even know until I met Jasmine. So I would be surprised if there is a bunch of teenagers that don't know how to take care of their skin. And it's a very vulnerable period where you have acne and you're just like, oh my gosh, like it's the end of the world. We want to minimize that transitional window where it's like super awkward, and just have people gain confidence as fast as possible and having a solution, not just.
Yeah. I totally see an ambassador program or something where people can like get trained or something in the Tupperware model. But again, taking that buy incentive out of it, and I'm not peddling the product, like you're coming to my event, this is what's going to happen. I love the idea too that you're partnering and making it more than just about skincare. Like obviously that's what the company does, but if you're stressed out all the time, your skin's going to probably look like shit too, because you're stressed out or you're not taking care of yourself the way you need to. Like the whole wellness element, where skin is like a big part of that. It's part of who we are, but there's other facets that you can create new opportunities that I don't think people put together is such a fascinating thing that I'm really excited to see how that kind of progresses and turns out.
That'd be great.
Is there anything else that you wanted to chat about that we didn't hit on, or anything else that I should have asked you about that we didn't get to?
No, I feel like we touched on a lot of different things, which is pretty unique. Really enjoying my time at Essence. And I think just to circle back on what I expected, I actually expected going from being a manager, director, and shifting to a VP, I expected it to be harder in different ways, but it's not. It's actually more fun. Just that something that might seem like you're not ready for, you might already be ready for. And that was a mental barrier to break through. And just for those that are looking to either climb up the corporate ladder or step out of a position and really challenge yourself, you might find that it's harder in ways, but maybe a lot easier in other ways. And maybe that you were ready for it all along.
I think that's also needs to be said more in 2024, where there's a perception that people who have more experience or in higher positions somehow know magic things. Nobody knows anything, right? And I find that people that are successful or grow the ladder are, one, just really good at politics, and in any large company, that's really all that matters. But I often tell people, and this is so like integral to the podcast and the idea with curiosity and creativity, is that you have to fucking start. I know a lot of people who tell me about some wild idea. I'm like, great, go do it. And when I'm on the opposite side of this, working in corporate, that's the number one thing that I see as a challenge with people is they need permission. And then once they get permission, then it's like the dog that caught the car and they don't know what to do. And it's okay, well, what's next? What do you need help with? I can't do this. Why can't you do that? I don't know. Let's go figure out why we can't, and we'll try it. And if it doesn't work, we learned. And if it works, then we could do it. Great. And it's just so simple to me. That's the framework. And obviously things get more complex as you add people, but I find that especially post-COVID, people have a really hard time breaking out of that like known constant of or trying something different or hitting the unknown. Do you have any advice for folks on, I think part of it's just how you're born. Like some people are just more risk prone or adventurous, but everybody's capable of it. And I think you hit on a really good point of try it even if you think you're not ready. But is there anything that you can think of that how to get yourself, if anybody's ever jumped into a pool off a diving board really high up, like that first time's fucking terrible. And the worst possible thing you can do is go to the edge and look down. And that's what everyone does.
Yeah.
But I feel like is that precipice of, oh, I've been a director, or I'm a manager, or I'm on the team, and I really think I want to try management, and then list of excuses. Is there anything you can share of like how did you break out of that, or how you've seen other people? Because again, you have a long experience in hiring people who probably didn't feel qualified.
Yeah, I would say one way to start getting out of your comfort zone is to ask for feedback. Start with somebody that you feel really safe with. Like maybe it's like your best friend or your coworker that you just share everything with, or it could even be your boss, or somebody on your team. Just asking them for feedback, and you can learn a lot of your strengths and your weaknesses, and that makes you more confident in going into whatever unknown that you're going into, because now you know what's in your tool belt. I have these tools and I know I need to work on some of these. And I think that's a lot of the unknown is just because we don't really know what we're capable of, or strengths and weaknesses. And it's good to get that 360 feedback.
Yeah. I love that you said tool belt. So many people say toolbox, and anybody who's ever worked with tools knows that the toolbox is like where all the good things go to die. It's just storage. Whereas the tool belt is the stuff you're readily using and need for the job. I love that specificity of analogy. Let's try this. can you give me some feedback? And this is unscripted, and feel free to just cut deep, because I think a lot of people will listen to this. And I think that is excellent advice. Start with somebody that you're comfortable with. I think number one, if you ask someone for feedback out of the blue, they're going to be like, excuse me, is this some kind of like trap? Unless you're me and I'm just like fucking lay into you for 20 minutes about all the things you can improve on. But it's that easy, right? You preface it with, hey, I'm trying to grow, or I'm really thinking about this thing. Can you give me some feedback? I think you could really help push me forward.
Okay.
And that's all true about you, right? We've known each other for a long time. Is there any feedback you want to give me on whatever?
Yeah, I think this could be an easy one. That branding, it doesn't matter if you're like commenting on a post or posting a post. I think sometimes people just off the cuff, this is on my mind, right? And I think that just pausing and taking like a step back. Okay, who is this reaching, and what might this be perceived? Sometimes it's good to see who your audience might be and either make it a little bit more targeted, or I think people feel like they're going to learn something from you. And that's how you get more people connected to your brand. Not to say that you don't do some of that already, but I think consistently. And hopefully that's good advice.
I appreciate you doing that for the whole world, and I will not cut that. I think you're right on. Like, just communication in general, like in a work context, also probably friends too. I like bombard people with shit. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, I had this whole thought train that you aren't privy to because you're not in my mind. But then it makes sense. And I think people that are like my friends just accept it.
Totally.
But when it comes to a work environment or again, like public presence, I usually have a thought. And I just want to break it down for people.
Yes.
Too. I'll have a thought and then I'll just usually action on it or execute on it very quickly. And if that's like a quick Slack to somebody or an email, or if I'm writing a marketing thing, I'll write it from a perspective and then I move on. And I don't typically take that time and space to come back to it and improve it from like an audience perspective. Again, like what am I trying to accomplish? Is I need to get this out of my mind so I can move on, and not I'm trying to write the most approachable marketing copy to somebody to understand the app that I built and why they would want to use it, or what is the problem I'm trying to solve. It's all baked into that system, and I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it intentionally enough where I think it gets lost, or it could be more effective if I did take a second approach or at it, or a second look. But it's, I had a better idea, or I'd like to phrase it this way, or I should have said this, or I forgot that, or whatever. And again, not coming back to who's the audience, who am I trying to reach, or is this the most effective way to do it? Is the Slack, what I'm thinking about it at 8:00 at night, really the best way to maybe ask somebody for something or tell them? I'm not very transparent with my teams. I'm like, and I try to do the send later stuff so they don't get bombarded at 8:00 at night, but I am super guilty of it, and I'm really bad at trying to improve it. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah, no worries. That's why it's easy to spot, because it used to be something that I did more until my husband, he's the opposite. He really reads every word and processes everything. And at first I was like, what are you doing? This is taking forever. And I saw the value in it, time, and just really slowing down. And like the revision for the next morning is like, it looks completely different. It's pretty amazing how our brain's still working overnight until the morning.
Time off task. I don't remember if we talked about it, but I try to bring it up as much as I can. So yes, doing the work matters, and doing the time, putting it in, failing or getting stuck or whatever, but also like disengaging, taking a break, going for a walk, trying to think of something else, getting your mind in a totally different sphere can sometimes be what you need. And even just in general, like if you're working all the time, like if you're, let's say, founding a company and doing a startup, you still need to get time away from talking about what you're doing. I think that's important. One quick thing, and then we can wrap, but I think for people with feedback, it's really easy to get defensive. And I get defensive still.
Great. So that was
when I get feedback. But I want to just like explicitly state too that it can be very uncomfortable, especially if it's a trusted friend or partner or a coworker, and then they like maybe illuminate something that you either didn't realize was a problem or something that you could improve on, or that you didn't think other people maybe noticed. And you're like, oh shit, the whole world gets it. And you're like, oh damn, like that sucks. So I guess be aware of that too, because I feel like a lot of people try this, and then they get the like feedback, oh, I'm actually writing the best copy ever, or I'm really bad at it, or whatever, and then there's an excuse line, and you have to grow yourself out of that. And maybe the feedback's wrong too. That's very possible.
Yes, of course.
Most people will default to that. And you have to be honest with yourself. In this case, again, I want to be really clear. I think you're spot on with your feedback to me, and so I appreciate that. But it takes practice.
Yes.
And I think that's the number one thing. So when you get that feedback and it feels a little icky, go ask someone else. Be like, hey, I got this feedback. Would you agree with that? And maybe they say, yeah, absolutely. That's right on. Your writing is confusing. And why are you sending it to me at 8:00 at night?
Yeah, I love how you said you take it and then you ask, because that removes that barrier from the person that's being asked. Like, it gives them a little bit of an opening. Maybe you feel this about yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like that presentation was my best. And I'm reaching out to you because I want to do better next time. And that opens the door to make it super easy for the person to give them feedback. It's a skill to give feedback. It's a totally...
Yeah, I'm really bad at that too.
So you're so good at taking feedback, but it's a total, there's an art to that too.
Yeah, so I like to challenge everybody to either go ask somebody that you trust or are close with for feedback. And this could be anything in life. Like, it doesn't have to be work related, right? Hey, you're my great friend. I'm just trying to grow as a person.
Yes.
What can I do differently? And another method I think that might work for folks is if you suspect that you might need some growth in an area, but hey, you could just make it up, right? I got feedback from someone about my writing style. Christine, do you have any feedback? You've read a lot of stuff I've written. I text you random hours of the day. Sometimes you respond. Is there anything do you agree with that? Or is there anything that you'd like to add and try to help me? And I think you'll be surprised that most people will just be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I think people really appreciate, and it like actually makes you closer to the person because you're like reaching out. It's a really nice feeling to have, hey, I want to hear your opinion, and I'm willing and being vulnerable to receive that. And I also know that some people don't like to have the face-to-face, or it's super awkward to give feedback. So another way is you can start with like even text or something. If it's a sensitive issue, I don't recommend. Just even start with like text. Like maybe that's a start before you actually do the verbal conversation.
And if you don't know, you can always broach it over text. Be like, hey, I'm trying to grow.
Yes.
Here's this thing that I think that
Perfect.
you could provide input on. Happy to chat in person. I do that all the time with people. And I'd say 1% of the time I get a call or a voice or a meeting from somebody to be like, hey, actually, let's actually talk about this, because it's easier to just quick talk than it is to try to write a dissertation, because then they feel like they have to give you this. I love that. And I suspect that's probably why your transition was as easy as it was for you, because you're already bringing those skills that most people that I know that have been in those positions don't have.
Oh, thank you.
Anything that you're reading or consuming that you want to share? I think you've done a great job, but if there's anything else that you want to highlight, I'm happy to push that out to everyone.
Yeah, I'll have to find the article, but I just read something recently on Forbes magazine about how like your next job is actually something that happens behind doors. It's like between a secret conversation. Mm-hmm. And what that means is you want to brand yourself to be the first person that they think of when they're forming a new position, or just, okay, this is my go-to person. Even if they don't fit that role, they can grow into that role, and treat your current job like an opportunity to market yourself for your next job, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And all the more reason that when you publicly speak to the world, you should think a little bit about how it might be received by other people.
Yeah, I'll share with you the article. It was actually really good. But people just don't think that far ahead, because they're just like, oh yeah, I want to get that promotion. But by the time that position opens, there's probably somebody else that they thought about already. And you want to be that person, not the person that I deserve it. You want to show, you have to put it in kind of the value first before you get back.
You got to make it easy for people to consume too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it was a blast.
You can find us at 38.com. It's like the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/38 or at ko-fi.com/38. Thanks for listening.